Hello everybody and welcome to the Robot Wars History Podcast with yet another episode. We've been on a good roll of things lately, churning out some really decent robots now. But we want to go back to a more condensed machine, one that isn't on such a high budget, but also has some pretty good advancements in the future. We are talking about Team 101 today. And that is obviously going to be covering Robo-Doc and 101 itself, and then the revolutionary Anarchy. So for this podcast, we've got an interesting lineup, not necessarily in terms of who's here, but in terms of our liking of the machines. So we'll just start by saying that I'm not the biggest 101 fan. It's more out of jest than genuine hatred, though. And part of the reason for that is our first guy on the panel today. He is Toon Ganondorf, who is a big fan of 101, aren't you, my friend?
Super 101 fan. It is in my top 5 favourite robots. It is a delight, and I'm pleased to be here talking about it today.
Indeed. So, in order to balance his love affair of it out, I obviously have to dull it down a bit. But in order to create that proper balance of true neutrality, we have got Theo back from his first appearance on the Mace episode, which was pretty good, so we thought he'd get him in again.
Hello there. I think 101 is a great robot, although, obviously not the best.
And that is perfectly fine.
And those are all the options. Good, bad, and in the middle. As long as you're closer to love than in the middle. Alright, so we've got some 3 big robots to talk about today. 2 of them obviously a bit heavier than the other one. We're going to skim over some of the basic stuff and really just talk about the philosophy of Mike Franklin and focus a fair bit on 101 as well as Anarchy, because I think that's the one that a lot of people really like to discuss, is how Anarchy would be and what the big step up there was between that. We also may have a special splice in, which we'll drop later on in the podcast. But that's to be confirmed, and we don't want to get ahead of ourselves just yet. So, Team 101 entered into Series 2 with Robo-Doc. We won't spend a whole heap of time on Robo-Doc, but Robo-Doc was sponsored by Doc Martens, hence the name, the popular shoe company that was where I think Mike Franklin worked for Doc Martens. It was essentially a bigger tank-like bulky version of the robot that we would all recognise in 101, and it had a lifting arm. It was a fairly solid contender by Series 2 standards. It did well in the Gauntlet and the Joust, in the top 3.
There's nothing wrong with it.
Nothing wrong with it. But its biggest sort of moment was its close bout with King Buxton in the Heat semi-final, which obviously set upon that rivalry that we all would come to know and love. As far as the King Buxton Robo-Doc fight, what do we think about that fight?
It's very interesting that this is a fight which is considered by Simon Harrison, the beloved man who's close to Team 101, of course, to be a very, very good fight. But apparently the show itself edited it to be a very clear King Buxton victory when it was deemed much closer by Harrison himself. So that's an interesting one there, but from what we saw, it was quite a clear indication that King B was the more boxed in, nimble, aggressive, and explosive pusher, whereas Robo-Doc was steady and viable here and there, but just wasn't quite dependable enough as a whole. And King B got at its sides a lot, pushed it around, got behind it, and it just showed that Robo-Doc kind of needed to be just a little bit more, not even controlled, but grounded, which we will get to a bit more for the 101 fight with King Buxton in the near future.
Yeah, Theo, anything else to add?
I feel what they wanted to do was partly edited it because obviously they knew the result of the fight in the editing process. I think they wanted to show King Buxton, and I'll never forget the shots they took when it blasted through the concrete blocks in the gauntlet. I think they really did try and push King Buxton that episode.
Yeah, that's like a proper mascot for Series 2, because...
and I think it's a really good point, because the Heat final, as we know, against All Talk was quite quick and quite decisive. So to get a proper drawn-out fight to show King Buxton in action, even though that may come at the expense of showing Robo-Doc's contributions, I understand why they would have done that.
Yeah.
But I think Robo-Doc was a fairly good robot. Like it does fairly well throughout the fight, even in the heavily edited version that we see on TV. Manages to hold on with its famous, the tracks that would make 101 iconic and everything like that. Goes toe to toe with Matilda at one point, and survives being pushed into the pit. How do we think Robo-Doc would have fared in a different heat? Because Heat I was quite a heavy heat. There was 3 good robots who all arguably could have won weaker heats in All Talk, King Buxton, and Robo-Doc.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, All Talk completely blitzed its way through the heat anyway, and then it still lost. And King Buxton obviously gave Roadblock a really good fight, so there was a lot of good talky machines going in that heat, and Robo-Doc was like the clear 3rd best machine, but it was still good. And yeah, other heats, I think it could have done pretty well.
Let's do a quick supercut.
Yeah.
Napalm or Demolition Demon? Could it have beaten one, both, or neither?
Both.
Both? I think both. Theo?
I think Napalm would have came up on top.
Okay. Mace and Chaos? Both, neither, or either?
Chaos. Would lose to Mace, beat Chaos.
Yes, I agree.
Yeah, same.
Mortis and Oblivion? I think it beats Oblivion pretty easily. But Mortis, probably not.
Yeah, Mortis it would probably lose on damage from that axe, and it would double his aggression.
Robo-Doc was very
plate.
body heavy. Big, prime target for the axe, especially because it was so wide as well. If it was narrower, it might be harder.
Yeah,
Inquisitor and Bearmoth? I think you can beat Inquisitor and Bearmoth.
Yes.
Obviously, you've got the Razor card in there, but Razor versus Robo-Doc would have been a really interesting fight because Robo-Doc's so big.
Yeah.
It might have, we'll see. We'll never know with Razor in Series 2.
I mean, we more or less got that fight in the next series.
Yeah, Robo-Doc's a bit big. I suppose, do you mean Agrobot as opposed to 101? Because it's probably more similar to Agrobot in size and shape.
I suppose so. I think against Mortis it would have been it'd be a really nice shape because it's only checker plate and it's got a massive cavity.
Yeah. Kilotron and Technophobic. Either, neither, both.
Oh God.
I think Kilotron
would against Kilotron.
I think Kilotron would have won over Robo-Doc.
I think and that I think the shape of Kilotron, it would make it quite easy for the lifter to get under.
Yeah,
it could, but I also feel like the plastic of Kilotron back in those days would actually help Robo-Doc. Would actually help Kilotron. The plastic would just sort of lift and flex, and then the arm would sort of come free and it would fall back down. I don't know.
I have a bit of a feeling that Robo-Doc could probably dislodge like a drive chain or something, because I doubt Kilotron's internals were exactly padded more in that centre plate. So I think Robo-Doc could pick its way through that one.
Yeah, Panic Attack and Disruptor.
It's not like Kilotron had a high ground clearance or anything.
Yeah. Panic Attack and Disruptor.
Oh, I rate Disruptor. It hugs the ground decently, and it's got a saw. Not a good saw, but it's viable for something.
It would definitely come down to Robo-Doc's pushing power, I think.
Yeah, I think Robo-Doc will probably just ride up it and roll over quite often. Yeah, I think
so that could be
both of those.
Neither. Yeah, I could concur with that. It's very hard for me to say that it could beat the champion of the series. So
yeah.
I think Panic Attack would be. The Fox would easily be able to pierce through, or at least get in through the massive gap.
Yeah.
And we don't know how securely on the tracks were on Robo-Doc either, but you never know. Something could have dislodged those. Roadblock and Onslaught.
Oh boy, beats
I want
Onslaught.
to say neither. Like, if Onslaught works in the Heat final, then I think Onslaught wins.
But could Onslaught's lifter actually lift in Series 2? Because I can't remember.
Oh no, it's just static in Series 2.
Yeah.
I still think it would probably do a fair shout because I think it'd just bully it round. You know, the way you just shove it round and wouldn't really get that much in
No.
return.
You see, I'd say Onslaught would win that one because
Yeah.
although it couldn't do much to Robo-Doc, I think because it was just more nimble and it could bully it, it could just even just ramming into it. I think it'd win on aggression.
Yeah, I do like Onslaught, but I do think its aggression and pace gets a little bit. Its flaws get ignored in replacement for its strength because it cast steers and it's got long sides, so I'm never really confident in
and
it.
no armor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway.
Loco and Cassius. There's no way it beats Cassius, unfortunately. Loco, I think it wins pretty easily.
I don't know. I think it could outlast Cassius. It would get
You reckon?
bullied around, but Robo-Doc would last to the end. So.
Oh no, but Cassius can easily flip it.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. It would dominate the fight, but Cassius would probably get into trouble with the house robots, lose a drive chain,
Yeah.
break its own
Actually, that's a good
flipper.
shout.
I think it
People
really could
vote
be.
in the comment section. That's a really good shout for this episode. Vote in the comment section. Cassius versus Robo-Doc. I'd love to hear the votes we get. All right, GBH and Ivanhoe. I feel like Ivanhoe and Loco exist purely to be flipped by other robots. Like that's their sole purpose in having ever been created.
Yeah.
So I think Ivanhoe it wins pretty easily. GBH is really slow. But
Yeah, and I remember, was it against Dead Metal where GBH's scoop just got completely cut up through basically nothing? So I think if Robo-Doc just rammed it around a bit, it would probably start to get ground down a bit.
yeah.
Shake something loose.
Yeah. I think it would do
Plunderbird
that.
2 and the Mule.
Oh god, Plunderbird 2 I cannot stand nowadays because quick little plug guys, Plunderbird 2 won an entire wiki tournament of a redone Series 2. Yeah. So I am voting for Robo-Doc no matter what.
Yeah, I think Plunderbird 2 it doesn't really have that much in the way of weapons, so I think Robo-Doc with a functioning lifting arm would probably do a fairly good job there.
And no stream mech, obviously.
Yeah, exactly. The Mule, it'd just be awkward. It'd probably just not be a good fight at all.
No, that
But
would
I
be
think
fair.
Robo-Doc could win.
I think the Mule would win because, as far as engineering goes, it's quite good. And that forklift.
Yeah, but
Well,
Derek
yeah,
was
but-
engineered well.
That's exactly right. Like, oh man, Derek. There you go. And then Hardbark and Havoc, I think it'd probably win both.
Yeah.
Might be
So
one of the worst heats of all time.
very competitive still, Robo-Doc.
Very competitive. I think the only one where we said it had no chance at winning was Panic Attack's heat, and maybe its own heat.
Haha, pretty much.
Yep. Panic Attacks, maybe Roblox, and its own heat. They're the only three that we didn't think Robo-Doc could have a chance of at least heat final status.
Robo-Chance.
I said Robo-Doc had a chance, whatever. So that's it for Robo-Doc. A sad, brief career for Robo-Doc, but essentially streamlined down. Now, what happened here was that after Robo-Doc's fairly poor showing, Mike Franklin wasn't able to get the sponsorship to enter Series 3 with a new and improved Robo-Doc. So what he did was he scrounged a lot of what was left of Robo-Doc and went down to the tip, picked up a whole lot of recycled material and made a robot that was famously known as 101, ostensibly because it cost £1 and a penny to make. When you take into fact all the recycled materials, it cost a fair bit more than that. But nevertheless, very instant iconic status because it was so cheap and yet it was very, very effective. Its main weapon went from being a lifter to an automatically firing spike, which was quite innovative for its time. it would fire as soon as it came into contact. Can I just briefly cut away and say, why on earth wasn't 101 in Robot Wars Metal Mayhem on the Game Boy Color? Because every robot in that game had an auto-firing spike.
That's true. But,
Like,
That game.
Chaos 2 and Pussycat had auto-firing spikes, and yet 101 wasn't in the game.
What the fuck?
honestly, I would say that it's probably a good thing that one of your favourite machines wasn't tainted by that game. So I think you should take it as a positive.
Chaos 2 isn't that game. Still love Chaos
I
2.
mean, am I right in saying that game had Crasher Nasher but no Hypno-Disc?
Yes.
Yeah, Crasher Nasher,
I mean-
Millian Bug, Purple Predator.
Oh, fucking hell.
It's like the true icons. Although 101 did get 3 other appearances in video games, so we won't get too worried about it. So on to the long and storied career of 101. Entered into Heat, I think J of Series 3.
Yeah.
And it collected a pair of wins over Centurion and Overkill. The Overkill fight, I think some people find controversial. Or at least that 101 got lucky. I'm not sure. What do you guys reckon?
Yeah, it wasn't necessarily controversial, but it was... Overkill came close with a couple of good drives to actually pitting 101. And we saw our first example of 101 not necessarily dominating a fight, but outlasting the opponent. And we know Overkill in Series 3 had a lot of technical issues, and that's how 101 edged it out. Not necessarily showing what it could do offensively, but the reliability from Robo-Doc was still there, and that's what got it through.
Yeah, and I really, really enjoy the fight with Centurion, just because on paper Centurion has 2 really effective weapons, looks really good, and it's a really good bout. I really, really enjoy it.
Centurion is an amazing robot. It just... You look at it and you think, yes.
Yeah, it's that.
I love
it's
it.
It's that robot.
That's a great saying.
It's that robot that you would see like in a kid's cartoon. It's the typical magazine drawing of what a robot would be from a kid. And
Yeah, a weapon on the front and a weapon on the back. Like, how can you go wrong?
And a face. And
And if you say to someone, Robot Wars Series 3, a robot like Centurion would be... What would come to their mind?
Yeah, like, you think of, like, what are the most Series 3 robots possible? You get Centurion, you get Dreadnought, you get, Facet, those kinds of robots that they look
Weldor.
like they're...
Weldor, yeah.
Weldor, Weldor and Centurion are
God.
basically the same robot, so... Funnily enough. But anyway, yeah, so 101, this is probably the first and really main fight where 101 wins by a KO through sheer just bullying, because its spike works in this fight. It wasn't working against Overkill, and it basically just mauls Centurion until Centurion breaks down.
Mauls, acting like it's a spinner or something.
Yeah,
Yes.
mauls it. It just runs into it and just grinds it down. Hey, those tracks basically are very, very slow spinning weapons.
Vertical spinners, there we go.
Vertical spinners. Double vertical spinner.
Downwards firing vertical spinner.
Yeah, eat your heart out, black
Black
hole.
hole.
101 did it first.
Oh,
But yeah, so 101 collects a victory against Centurion. Good fight, good hustle. And then we get into the first sort of real vengeance fight. We had a couple in Series 2, Cassius and Mortis, which was just a silly fight. Mortis and Napalm. Nemesis and Robo-Doc didn't fight again, did they? No. That's really it. There hasn't been any others until this point, have there?
No.
So this is the first one in the main competition. You feel fairly sure that this was drawn on purpose, because they were hyping the Heat final right up the front, and deservingly so, because it was great to see, 2 robots come back and fight each other again. They tried so hard to replicate this in Series 9. Problem was, Apollo just got curb stomped by Carbide twice, and it was so depressing to watch. Whereas here, the robot getting vengeance was a little bit more even, and it was a better fight for it.
I think it was a much... You could see both robots had clearly improved significantly. You know, for King Buxton, you had the... I think by now you had the disc, and you had more effective lifting spikes.
I didn't have the disc, but yeah, the spikes were more...
They had some kind of
they were
like
more,
crappy
like that actually...
flaggle, but yeah.
But like the spikes, they could actually do the job.
Yes, yeah.
They were more viable. Buxton, it was called King Buxton 2 for a reason. It was reworked, and the internals were... Because, you know, from Series 2, it was the first build. They tried to... It couldn't live with the stress, and that's why it broke down against roadblocks, so... You know, Simon tried to rework it. But, yeah, both machines, they made improvements, and obviously 101 was completely redone from Robo-Doc, and it's funny, King Buxton doesn't perform worse than in the Series 2 fight, but here, 101 can't be bundled over. That's the big difference. It goes from this essentially top-heavy, yes, it's invertible, but it can be bundled over machine in Robo-Doc, to this just low centre of gravity, hard to push around thing. And the difference is, when King B got at the side in Series 2, Robo-Doc would be tumbled over maybe into the PPZ or whatever. But here, 101 can keep digging in with its tracks, and King B might push it across the arena a bit, but it wouldn't get too much leverage apart from pushing it around in the centre. So
it's a really good point. Like you can't tip 101. Robo-Doc, because it's got that big chunky backside. You lift Robo-Doc, it'll sort of tilt back onto its heavy back. You look at Centurion or even Panic Attack trying to lift 101. It's so slippery and it's so long and flat that one of its tracks just inevitably ends up still on the ground.
Exactly. It just digs in and holds its own.
Like 101, you lift it and it finds its way back on its feet.
Well, yeah, I'm not being funny.
Never...
Even Weldor, which we'll cover shortly, was it tried to lift it via one of its tracks, but because it's so wide and low to the ground, 101 still easily had, I believe it was its left set of tracks on the floor, and was still pushing Weldor around. So it doesn't look versatile, 101, because it's just an invertible rectangle thing, but it really knows how to make use of its angles when it's in a bit of an awkward situation.
Yeah.
And another strength I'd say against King Buxton especially is because it has such a gaping ground clearance at the front, you can push it. And although you can get underneath it and push it momentarily, it will just drive over you.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. Buxton tried to get at the side a couple of times, and it got a little bit of joy, but it was mostly just 101 digging in, as I've said. But yeah, from the front, it's equally as awkward, because unless you're a flipper, you're just going to lift 101's tracks on top of you, and then 101 can reset itself and attack you when you're facing the opposite direction. So
it's actually a fairly nice little segue that I'll just take in a second. It's nice to see 101's spike actually does damage visibly to King Buxton as well. But the fight grinds basically to a halt. The two robots have, given it their all. They've tussled. King Buxton has noticeably started to smoke and slow down, and 101 is declared the winner. And it's a really good shout. It's really pleasing to see 101 get vengeance. This is one of 3 times in Robot Wars history where 2 robots have a grudge match where each of them won the fight, then went on to win the heat. The others were Scutterbots and Nightmare in Series 4 and 7, and Pulsar and Ironside in Series 8 and 9. So
I do think that the heat final, it should have been for all along 101 versus Eric.
Well, yeah, it should probably have been, shouldn't it? But good old Eric.
I think I would have given Weldor a fairly good shout against Eric, but that's for another time. So let's talk about Scutter's Revenge, who's probably the first robot designed to actually be able to fight 101. We won't talk on it very much because it's a pretty dull fight because Scutter's Revenge just breaks down, but you see that bulldozer blade on Scutter's Revenge combined with the tremendous pushing power of Scutter's Revenge. It actually has the ability to do something to 101 in the short term. In the long term, not so much, because when you get 101 driven all the way up your wedge so you're actually able to, tip it over or push it around, then where do you go? It sort of just slides back down and then it's on the ground again.
Do you think Scutter's Revenge, that was probably the best... It was the best robot to face 101.
At that point, yes, certainly.
There's a difference between being a flat box with lifting spikes like Buxton and...
Or even Panic Attack.
This... Because Scutter's Revenge is such a steep wedge, and you can prop 101 up at a bit of an angle as long as you are decently fast enough to push it as it's trying to get back down.
And to, capitulate on that.
Yeah, but it's Scutter's Revenge, so it burns down, which
Carks
101 just doesn't. So you're gonna lose, and it did.
Yeah, and
I think it's kind of sad that we're actually able to give Scutter's Revenge some praise.
Yeah, I think it's.
I
kind
like
of sad
Scutter's
that,
Revenge. It's very easy to underrate Scutter's Revenge. It's not terrible. It's just unreliable. It's just like Spawn Again. When it works, it does a good job.
Yeah, I think it's kind of sad that. Yes, it's a good little machine, but the main thing we miss is that Oloremi Idris ended up going out at the first round of the semi-finals, so...
Yeah, we were deprived.
Yeah, 101 ruining the fun for us all again.
And speaking of ruining the fun, we get to talk about one of Nick's least favourite fights.
Oh, no. Here's the fact. We've had a nice little ride so far. This has been a nice little highlighting of such a cute little machine, and now the anger will start shortly. Oh, boy.
Lead us off, Nick.
No, I'm cool.
All
I
right.
need to keep myself away for a little bit.
Okay, so when I was a young lad watching Robot Wars The Third Wars, I thought Hypno-Disc versus 101 was a very exciting fight. I still think that it's a good fight. It's perfectly entertaining. Because at this point, Hypno-Disc has mauled everything. It had a scare against Berserk 2 that I never thought it was going to lose. It's mauled 3 other robots. And 101, the first time, manages to tank the blows. And it runs the whole way through. Of course, now you realise that's because Hypno-Disc's weapon is barely working, rather than anything 101's doing itself. And the whole thing where the judges went down and inspected the damage to the robots was clearly the producers hyping the fight for some sense of drama. But I tell you what, it worked when I was a kid. It worked very well. I was buying right into it. I was like, this is the closest decision of all time. And arguably, it's certainly not the closest decision of all time, but they did a really good job at making me feel like it was, and that's why I enjoyed the fight.
Yeah.
You look back at the fight, and it's Hypno-Disc is obviously not on top form with this fight. It's
No.
you can.
Yeah.
As soon as that disc taps something, it just gives
Well,
up.
it never got up to speed in the first place. It just... Saying it was laboured wouldn't even be...
It was never up to speed now.
Wouldn't even be describing it. Yeah, I have an issue with this fight, and it's not 101's fault either, even though I often come across in that way. Part of it is obviously it gets more credit than it deserves. I understand why that would be a thing from nostalgia, because it's hard to try and shake it off and realise it's not really that good. But I also dislike it because people use this fight to hype up 101's durability when there was nothing for it to stand up to because Hypno-Disc wasn't working. And then 101 loses to a weaponless, wedgeless rectangle on a judge's decision. Why would you use that to hype up 101? If you want to hype up 101's durability, look at a fight in the same series. Razor in the World Championship.
Yes.
It got carved to pieces in that. It did nothing offensively.
No fucks given.
And then in the last 4 seconds, 101 got in the most cute little push ever. And it just sums up everything about what it is. It can get mullered. And it still kept working. But people put that praise onto this fight when, in reality, this was a massive chance. The only chance 101 and Team 101 would ever have of reaching a grand final, and they bottled it. They should have won this fight, and they didn't.
Yeah.
And that's a shame more than anything, more than saying it was a good thing for 101, because they lost when Hypno-Disc wasn't working properly.
I'm just laughing. I've just realised that you want to hear something really quick. Quick cutaway.
Oh,
my
no.
top five robots. These are some of the fights. Like there's a couple that are a bit of an outlier, but of the 5 fights where my top 5 robots have fought each other, Chaos 2 and Hypno-Disc in the Series 3 final, Hypno-Disc 101, and Bulldog Breed versus Hypno-Disc in Series 6.
And Bulldog Breed Hypno-Disc happened twice.
I know. The only good one is Tough as Nails Bulldog Breed. That's it.
Yeah. Dear Christ, mate.
So there you go. That's a good one. Little shout. But yeah, look, I think the thing I always remembered is Hypno-Disc's disc being all scratched by 101's tracks, but that's really all it could do, sadly. The auto-firing spike was never going to get a precision hit on Hypno-Disc's wheel like Pussycat would do.
Oh,
a year
imagine.
later. Imagine.
It's something I've noticed rewatching some of the 101 fights. The spike, it never fires when it's near an opponent. It seems to me that's always pre-fired by the time it reaches them.
Yeah, it does stick out a lot, doesn't it? Just hangs out in the fired position randomly, but you never really notice it because
you really only see it once, and that's against King Buxton in the Series 3 heat final.
Yeah, and even then
it sort of pushes them away. It doesn't sort of go out to meet them.
And it's not like 101 charges up to King B and the spike pushes it away. It's 101 getting really close and cuddly with Buxton, hugging it for about 20 seconds, and then the spike finally comes out.
Yeah,
it's quite funny.
We got to move on. We're at the half an hour mark. We're still on Series 3. Let's just do a really quick yes, no, or unsure. How would 101 have fared against Stegosaurus in the grand final?
Oh boy.
Oh wow.
I think it would lose, but I think it would be a nice. It would basically be Stegosaurus has a bit more than Buxton did, so it.
Yeah, I think Stegosaurus feels like it would be the winner, but I feel like if I was actually voting on this in a fantasy tournament, I'd go 101.
Yeah, of course you would.
Yeah.
I have a hunch that those spines might be able to do something to 101, possibly beat it if they wedge itself in between the chassis and the tracks. Those spines might have been able to do something.
They could have hooked it, kept it in an awkward position.
As like we said, Stegosaurus it does look like the clearer winner, but I'd put money on 101.
No,
good shout. Alright, we won't dwell too much on the first World Championship. It was a nice little shout for 101 to enter on behalf of England, and it reaches the top 4 because of a very unpopular fight with Panic Attack, which we've kind of already discussed. 101's very difficult to pick up. And so I've seen some hilarious defenders who go, no, Panic Attack didn't pit itself. 101's track hit the ground, and then it full on spun Panic Attack into the pit.
It was the classic series version. It was the classic series version of Razor Killy Cranky. Well done, Mike Franklin.
Yeah, exactly. It was literally the amount of power. He would have needed to run 101's track to 1,000% power to spin 2 heavyweights at the precise angle to get him into the pit. Don't get me wrong, I don't think Panic Attack bottled it. I think 101 did steer somewhat, but I think it's somewhere in the middle. I don't think it's Panic Attack's fault or 101's credit. I think it's a little bit of both.
I think it's I think it's not Kim Davis's fault. It's Panic Attack as a machine's fault itself, because it was basically undrivable, as we know in Series 3, just spinning on the spot. And with 101's track on the floor here, that wouldn't be 101 dragging Panic Attack into the pit, but because Panic Attack would be doing the spinning on the spot, it would then give 101 traction itself because it would be spinning. So then it creates like the bigger arc, which arcs it into the pit as opposed to spinning on the spot. So it all combines a bit there into an awkward moment.
And then we had a fight with Weldor, which was pretty much a replica of the Centurion fight. We've talked about that enough. And the Razor fight, a little bit of a laugh. It was good to see. Everyone had a good humour. Everyone knew Razor was going to win this. They just did a nice little, we won't destroy your robot, we'll just crush you and carry you. It's like the only time Razor crushing and carrying around, waiting for time to run out. It's actually that a little bit funny.
You know, there's a great still of Razor crushing it, and as you look at it, some can argue the Razor team are very good sportsmen, but on the other hand, it doesn't look like they tried very hard to actually. I think they were just lucky, you know,
to not terminally damage 101. Yeah,
exactly. They seem to completely have ignored what's written.
Well, they are in a control booth. And they could have just branded
anything as an accident if they did do any terminal
you try
damage.
reading something that's on a 1 meter slab of metal, which is probably about 120 meters away at a diagonal angle in the arena from the
trying
control
to
booth.
kill you.
Try to read what's the difference between where they've drawn this in Texter. Like, that was all just for hilarity. It was never going to be
funny.
A target.
I'm not being funny. How else can Razor attack a flat box?
Yeah.
It's going to have to lift 101 onto its sides and attack its tracks from a flat position or something. Dear.
But yeah, 101, good shout. One of the few robots to come in the top 4 of a world championship and the top 8 of a domestic championship. I think with basically it's the all-stars and then, 101 and like Manta. That's it.
Jesus.
And that's Extreme Warriors Manta too.
Yeah.
So good for them. Good shout. On to Series 4. 101 contributes very little to its first round fight, so we won't really talk about that one. We'll save that for the Dominator 2 podcast. Major Tom, kind of just your classic 101 pressure fight. Get some shithousery of the head being bonked off by Shunt, but
yeah,
good laughs.
It's one drive across the arena floor, and Major Tom just says, "Yeah, I haven't got my vertical spinner, my very powerful vertical spinner, so I must just lose this fight immediately."
It's a very forgettable fight, like super forgettable.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then onto a fight which is anything but forgettable. I won't go into this because I have talked about it extensively on the Ultimate Review podcast.
No, we need a blow-by-blow Toast in the Ultimate Countdown Review Part 3.
Review Part 3, go and listen to it. 101, this is 101's greatest fight. And it's a loss, but it's its best fight. If you were to talk about its best win, we might talk about that at the end of the podcast, but this is 101's best fight. It has no business beating Dominator 2. It is perfectly designed to be smacked by an axe. It has, an outdated weapon. It's the 9th seed, but that's, it's got Dominator 2 in the heat. It was an opportunity heat for Dominator 2. They would have taken one look and said, yes. But 101 has no business doing anything in this fight, and it absolutely goes the distance. It launches like 3 unbelievably aggressive attacks. It pushes Dominator 2 around the arena. It takes what it's got and it goes to town with it. Like, it's got drive tracks and a firing spike, and it really gets stuck in. And
it tries so hard,
and it gets some really good attacks on. So it's a fantastic bout.
It's what you'd expect from a budget, but it doesn't have much, but what it does have, it pushes it to the limit. You could see it was really trying.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's completely underarmed, and it takes the fight to Dominator 2 with such ferocity that it's just admirable. Like they don't sit around waiting for the inevitable like someone like Cherub. They just go, no, you know what? It's just
salty
aggression. No, I'm just saying. So yeah, great fight. Dominator 2 deserved to win, but I really think 101 won on aggression. And that's, if it loses all three of the other criteria, fine. But I reckon it was the more aggressive of the two, and I'll believe that until, the day I die.
just dreaming about 101 on your deathbed. Beautiful.
Yes, very good. All right, so that's the end of 101 Series 4 campaign, a fairly respectable heat final. And then we get the Dream Team reunion of King Buxton, King B3 rather, and 101 in the Tag Team Terror.
Yes, we do. Yeah, the Tag Team Terror was a great little tournament to bring in. Very off the cuff, very entertaining idea. And although it didn't always go out, it was more in theory that it was brilliant than actually in practice for the most part.
Yes.
You still, thankfully, in this very first tournament, you still got an iconic team. Because you look at this first batch of robots we have, and the identity is just not there for most of the pairs. Like,
all of the other pairs.
Firestorm Scorpion. Yeah. Why? Exterminator Invertebrate. Yeah. Why? Bigger Brother Plunderbird is cute and funny, but there's still no connection between the
two character teams. Like, let's get Mike Onslow, Brian Kilburn, and Joe Watts all on one team. That'll be hilarious.
Yeah, and it was good fun. But when you want that true, yes, this is me, this is my actual partner, King B and 101 is truly perfect for that.
Yeah, like, who else would you pick to pair up? Like, obviously you can't have someone like Chaos 2 Firestorm or Chaos 2 Gemini or, any of those kinds of robots pair up, because it'll just be OP. But, yeah, who's a great little team that we can pair up? King B3 and 101. That'd be hilarious. And it was great. I feel like they picked this team specifically to win this tournament. And then, therefore, they said, how can we neuter Firestorm 2 so that they don't win it? Let's give them Scorpion as a partner.
The ultimate insult.
Yeah. You think
there's
Graham
that and
Bone...
the fact that,
You think
that
Graham
and the fact
Bone
that
has worked his
Firestorm 2
way up.
carks it.
Yeah, you think Graham Bone's worked his way up from Groundhog, gets to a grand final in Series 3, tries to improve his machine, and then he's just like, yeah, you're given Scorpion.
Here you go, here's Scorpion.
Good reward.
Yeah.
Oh.
Funnily enough, I think actually 1, 2, 3, half of the robots in this heat lost to Dominator 2 at some point in this tournament. That's pretty funny. I just realised. Because I thought, hang on, Firestorm 2 lost to Dominator 2, so did 101, and so did Bigger Brother, and then I'm like, there you go. Fun little trivia. But yeah, funnily enough, the final comes down to 101 versus Firestorm 2. 101, I mean, there's not a whole lot to contribute to these. Most of this Tag Team Terror is just robots breaking down or driving into the pit or being just Scorpion. So, bit of a laugh. Both 101 and King B3 do a good shout at wrestling with these other machines. Ultimately, they win just through sheer tenacity and crappy luck from their opponents. But it's just pure delight to see them fight each other at the end of the tournament, because it's just like the rivalry. They've got one each and they say, well, we're going to decide it now. We're going to fight between ourselves.
Well, yeah, that's it. They make such a perfect partnership. You can see in these two battles how they work in tandem really nicely. They're both good machines at what they do. But in the end, you can't resist that Robot Wars little jibe at each other and going back to your roots. It
and
really
that's the great
is
thing
perfect.
about it. And that's the great thing about it, because they're both such inoffensive robots. They're just like, spikes and lifters. They can fight each other with no repercussion. Imagine a Carbide versus Eruption Tag Team Terror, and they turn on each other at the end. It'd just be awful.
It's just like, sorry, Michael, blitzed out your entire right wheel again, mate.
Yeah, whoops.
But here it's just Jonathan Pierce screaming as
Yeah.
101 slowly clambers on
You
top
are
of
meant
King
to be
B.
teammates.
Oh, brilliant.
It's great. It is very, very strange that Firestorm 2 just breaks down in this fight.
I think Graham Bones sabotaged his own machine. He didn't want to go with Scorpion anymore. He'd had enough. I can't blame him.
I thought you were going to say he sabotaged so that the others could win, but no, he just doesn't want to be with Scorpion anymore.
We'd all do the same.
He's like, I don't want Scorpion to have another combat victory. It's already gotten one on the back of my machine. I'm not giving it another one.
And then you just go in the pits after the fight and you see the bin next to the Firestorm 2 table with loads of parts in it. And it's like, Graham,
Yeah.
why are all of your internals in the bin? And he's just like, oh, nothing. Just extra spare parts I didn't need.
No, he got Dr. Zulu to steal all the parts in Extreme One
yes,
shithousery.
of course. There
Rips
we go.
all the cables out. Yeah.
Hello everyone. I now have the tremendous privilege to briefly interrupt the recorded podcast for a special treat. As we've discussed in the podcast, both in this one and in previous ones, one of my favourite parts of the show are the friendly rivalries between Roboteers. Perhaps the most famous of all time is the rivalry between Team 101 and King Buxton. Therefore, it seems only appropriate that we take a moment to discuss this rivalry with perhaps the best person for the job. It is a real pleasure for me personally, and on behalf of the podcast, to introduce Mr. Simon Harrison of King Buxton for this special segment. Simon, thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, hello. Thank you very much. You're very welcome. I'm very happy to be here. Thank you.
Simon, I just have a couple of quick questions that I'd like to just discuss with you about the rivalry and about your experience with Mike on the show. What was your initial impression of Mike when you guys first met in Series 2?
Well, actually, he made a very big impression. We actually met before the main filming of the series. The first time I and the team saw Robo-Doc was at there was like a tryout, which was, I think, the end of July, before they filmed in something like August or September. And, we'd seen from watching Series 1, the sort of standard robots we thought we might be up against. And we walked in, and probably the second or third bot we saw loitering around dangerously was Robo-Doc. And we were just, myself, immediately drawn to this machine, because the standard of engineering, we knew, I don't want to exaggerate anything, but this had a standard of engineering above what we were expecting, quite honestly. So immediately we were drawn to 101 and had a very casual chat with Mike, but of course I knew nothing about him, and I was a bit nervous speaking to all the other builders there. But that left a very big impression on us, and actually very early on he set a standard, a benchmark in our mind, and we thought, blimey, we can't match this level of detail engineering, but I hope we don't meet him. But maybe it was like, we're going to have to try really hard to do where all the bots going to be like this.
Yeah, and obviously you guys did fight in the very first arena fight of your campaign, and you guys were victorious. The edit, I think, was quite condensed down, because I believe you've said before that it was a nail-bitingly close decision, and one that could have gone either way. What was the experience of like being in that fight?
It was quite intense. We built up in our mind that really of all the bots in that heat, Robo-Doc was the one, as well as All Talk a little bit, but All Talk we saw ways of being able to beat him. But Robo-Doc, he was the benchmark and standard that we thought, right, we're going to have to beat him by sheer will force rather than having a better bot, because he did have a much better machine. And there was things that we had in King Buxton which were unique, we knew were of an advantage against the other machines in the heat, in that we had like a the electronics had like a direct control of the steering, so it's very responsive. Whereas things like All-Talk had like servos driving steering potentiometers, which they basically just had. We could see they wouldn't have the response. And King Buxton got off to a bit of a slow start with the setup, but after a while we thought, right, we got quite a good response. But Robo-Doc, after all he's used 101 and Robo-Doc, but Robo-Doc, he had a very similar system, and Mike had worked out, and I thought it was really intelligent, and I thought this is going to be a really nippy machine, and it was. So in that fight, there was a lot of interplay that probably wasn't that exciting. They edited it down a lot, but we were positioning in the arena and like playing off one another in the positioning, and our drive was working well that day, and I think he was driving was good. So there's a lot of shuffling around, trying to get like the high ground, as it were, in the arena. But I think they cut that out, and you don't really see that strategy going on. And it was the strategic parts which actually were very exciting. It's like, where's he going to be? He's going there. We want him to be there. And I've never felt a fight. There's not many fights where you have a lot of strategy. Very often, it's very much you crash around. And I think later on you've said, you don't often see King Buxton driving with accuracy, and when you do, it was something enjoyable. But in that fight, that was actually an accurate fight. But unfortunately, the accuracy maybe didn't come over to the editors as something worth showing. So, in a nutshell, there was a lot of positioning, and eventually we got to it, and they showed the more violent bits, and it was a great fight. I loved it.
That's great. Now, obviously, in Series 3, you guys were in the same heat. Was that something that was deliberately planned, or was it something that they took up and then they sort of ran with after it happened unintentionally?
I don't know for sure. No one's ever said, but I've got a good idea, because there was a small snippet of video you might have seen on the behind the scenes video of the Robo-Doc, Robo-Doc, Mike and his team throwing Robo-Doc in a skip. Well, they made out they're throwing it away. I know it still exists, so it didn't actually get crushed or anything. And I think that probably, I know the producers do watch all the behind the scenes stuff, and they were, he said, we'll get you next time, Buxton. And I know they do arrange the heat so that they can get interesting fights, and I think that was something probably they knew would be of interest. Obviously, they wouldn't know absolutely what was going to happen in the future, but they'll take any chance they can to set something up for excitement. So I believe there's something in it.
Yeah, there's a really good point, because I mean, you see, when you've got so many episodes to fill, you need something for each one, and when you've got a fight, and obviously with two robots, when you've got King Buxton and 101 as the two big names in the heat, objectively they're both flat silver boxes with spike lifters.
Mm-hmm.
That drama is what essentially makes it, and they did a good job. It worked a lot better than, if I may say so, a lot better than the attempts to hype the Carbide Apollo rematch in Series 9, because that ended up falling quite flat.
Yes, well, thank you. Yeah, I mean, it's because of similarity of our bots. If you've got two closely matched machines and a lot of determination, and we did have, you have to have it in your head you want to win. And as I've said before, we wanted to win because we knew he had the better machine, and we just knew we had to put so much more into our fight. And I think that may or may not come over, but that's the real state of affairs. It was a real intensity of being able to match the standard that Mike had set. I mean, I talk like we're always below him, and I feel that way. He was in myself and the team's minds beyond, the engineering scope of his machine was beyond ours, and it just made us want to play harder and fight harder. And I think he also didn't want to be seen, obviously, to be losing to probably King Buxton was not as good as his machine. You wouldn't want to be losing, would you? So it did make a good fight.
And of course, the moment where it was cemented was the Series 4 Tag Team Terror. The three seemingly random pairings, and then you and Mike being paired together. Do you get the impression that was perhaps the whole point of perhaps even the tournament, or how did they approach you about being a team?
Oh yeah, the tag team was filmed after everything was over. We hadn't done that well, I suppose, in that series. I mean, we'd come along and done our bit, and we got as far as we thought, and we thought, well, maybe we'd give up, quite honestly. We thought, oh, well, you know, we've done all right over the years. But they phoned us up sometime after, and I'd started a new job, actually, and suddenly I had to talk to a brand new boss and say, look, I've really got to get some time off. I've got to go now to film this thing, which I wasn't too sure about, but I knew it involved 101, so I wanted to be in it. But yes, the producer phoned up and said, look, we had this idea. We thought it'd be really good if, you know, would you mind coming back, getting your robot back together and coming back to fight versus 101 again? And at that time, there was a very loose concept. So I don't know if it's something they had an idea of getting us together, then beefing up the concept a bit, but they didn't explain that well. They said, you know, it'd be some sort of tag affair, but we're not too sure yet. So maybe the thing came together. They were looking at they had some spare time, and I think it's not something they maybe planned and just threw together. That's the impression I got. And I'm not saying they did it for us, but we certainly didn't know anything about it to the very, very last minute.
Yeah. And just a final question. Obviously, after you guys successfully won the tournament, much to the delight and entertainment of everybody, there was a title defense in Extreme 1 that didn't go quite so well.
No.
And then obviously the rivalry was settled in a vengeance match. Was the vengeance match always going to happen, or did that happen after the tag team title defense fell apart?
I think they had a list of. I think for that filming, they probably had a list of things they'd like to get in. I don't think you'd ever go into a big show and be, you know, selling a big show without doing a lot of planning it in advance. So I had the idea that, I mean, they had us locked into that show. You know, we were there for the couple of weeks they were filming it, and they brought things up. But I don't remember there being a specific list of events we'd been from the start. So I guess they had a sort of a clipboard full of things they might film. But I was very disappointed, you know, at that time. I mean, this is about a 101 show, but Buxton wasn't his best then. Still glad we did it, and you know, I got my chance to, you know, tell the audience, which I've always actually wanted to say. I've always felt, and I'm saying it now, that, you know, Robo-Doc and 101 were the better. You know, he was the better team. He's the better engineer. It's the better machine. And I've no, you know, I'll be honest and flat out say it. And I'm actually very glad that I was able to say that. And, you know, to everyone listening here, you know, there might be some criticism early on and say, well, that's spite from 101 didn't do anything. But, you know, 101 was a very well engineered machine. The spike did work. It put holes through the side of my machine. You might not have always seen it. His little forks at the front for the lifters maybe was something added later because it's the only way it could really go with the track system. But you know, that I was very, very pleased to have that fight in the end and settle that out, and give Mike the full credit he deserves over the years, because without that great machine 101, I wouldn't have had a quarter of as much fun in Robot Wars as I've had over the years, and I might have given it up much earlier. I'm hoping that Mike will come back. I don't know if 101 will come back. I don't think it will. You know, he moved on to Anarchy. We'll see, but I hope something in the future will come back, and I'd like to rekindle that rival, you know, setup, because that was great fun.
That's great. Simon, on behalf of all of our listeners and me personally, thank you so much for your time.
No, you're very welcome. I'm very happy to be on. I'm always glad to let you know how I'm thinking, and good luck with the rest of the podcast. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I'll pass back over to Nick, Theo, and myself to continue the podcast.
So, the Extreme 1 Tag Team Terror, not quite as good as the Series 4 one. A little bit better in terms of combat, I think. But,
I don't think so, mate.
I don't know.
There.
I don't think I've seen both tournaments all the way through in a while, and I think that might be on purpose.
Good choice.
I mean, I watched it today on Challenge, and
Oh, that was the Extreme 1 one. Oh, you poor thing. I thought you meant the Extreme 2 one.
oh my
which is actually the
god,
good
it was
one.
terrible. Bloody Major Tom and Coming Gesserix in the same battle.
Not to mention, you know, Mini Mega the Morg is in there
Oh.
as well, and Something, and Cerberus, and These teams, again, what are these teams? There's no logic
Chemistry.
to any of these teams.
Yeah. And this tag team as a whole was useless by the final. And you know where it all started? With our beloved pair bombing out in the very first round. And that's why it all went downhill from there. Bloody
It
hell.
did. I mean, they were never going to defend their title as much as it was fun to pretend that they might. Because, I mean, for heaven's sake, look at some of the caliber of robots. You had, like, a good version of Bigger Brother now. You had, you know, Dietor, you had Steel Avenger and Suicidal Tendencies. Like, they were a spawn again. There was a bit of a step up.
They were more balanced
yeah.
pairs than Firestorm and Scorpion.
Yeah.
And Bigger Brother and Plunderbird. Oh wait, even though that was meant to be a pair anyway.
It was meant to be Bigger Brother and Plunderbird because they were going to, and then they sort of had to withdraw. And
yep, Plunderbird did the most damage it ever did to a door.
Major Tom. I would have loved
But
to have
don't
seen...
worry, we got Major Tom.
I would have
Well, no,
actually
it's-
loved to see Firestorm and Scorpion try and defend their silver medal. That would have been hilarious.
But it's funny because even though the competition feels a bit deeper, like there's more pairs and there's a better spread of quality, at the same time, King Bee and 101 completely control this fight for like 2 minutes, and then there's just a sudden bit of extreme randomness, and I do mean that as in Robot Wars Extreme, that where Jonathan Pierce just starts losing it and hyping up the fact that 101's track froze up and King Bee spun out of control, but to me they won this fight, and I don't really see how it should have retroactively been given as a Dietor and Megamorg win, because neither of them were counted out and they were both still moving until the 3 minute
shot
mark.
that shot of Dietor flipping 101, you can just tell is like one of the most overrated attacks since Pussycat lifting Dominator 2's shell.
Oh god, it's just Dietor propping 101 up into the air a bit and then using that
flicking it up.
Yeah, and then using that stupid long stick thing it has on top to just bundle it slowly over. It's so bad.
Yeah, I would have loved for 101 and King B3 to go out, but it's almost a little bit nice that Dietor and Pussycat also lose in round 1 to the eventual champions in the following Extreme Tag Team Terror. Kind of makes it a nice little...
It's a nice tradition.
It's like a tradition, exactly.
Handing over the torch,
Although
losing in the
it
first
does
battle.
help that the
Eventual
Extreme 2 tag team was pretty good.
Yeah.
As opposed to this one.
Yeah.
But
But at least, you know, Mini Mega the Morg also loses as well. He doesn't get to continue on either. Collects a rare win for Mega Morg and then carks it and never wins anything again, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it is quite funny, though. You look at if King Bee and 101 won this fight, this still could have opened up quite nicely for them, because Pussycat would never have entered the competition because it would have been out with Dietor and Megamorg.
Yeah.
And then they would have faced Come and Getterix and a non-functioning Spawn again for their
Ooh.
chance to get through to the final itself.
Yeah.
So
That would have been a good shout.
it really could have opened up.
I mean, Steel Avenger and Suicidal Tendencies would have easily won the final, but, I mean, hey, we would have actually shared some trophies around for once. It would have been a nice little change of history.
You know, and here's an extract from the website. There might be a slight disadvantage because they're only rated for 2.5 minutes at full power. I'm hoping that this will not be a problem.
Who's that about?
101
Oh.
and the new motors it had
Really?
for Extreme. Yeah.
But that's
Yeah,
strange
even
because...
he knew it would completely. It said that before the motors start smoking.
But that's the interesting thing, because 101, and let's talk about, you know, some of its other fights, like the fight with Fluffy, which it absolutely gets curb stomped. It still lasts the full 5 minutes, even with only one working track. It doesn't, like, you know, burn out or anything like that. It just sort of keeps on keeping on.
Yeah, it's probably because it didn't actually have to push Fluffy backwards or anything, so there was much less stress on the one motor that it was still using. But yeah, It's something.
I mean, it didn't even have to move.
It was just kind of twitching, yeah.
I think I like, although it was depressing to see 101 killed by Fluffy, it was great to see a Series 3 robot gradually declining, and that could also show how robots are advancing simultaneously.
Yeah, in the proper way, not just a robot completely falling
Like
off a
101 versus Dominator 2 is the perfect progression. It's like, you know what, you're the new guy, but I'm still going to make you fight for this win. Fluffy, it's just sad. And it's even sadder because Fluffy doesn't go on to become an all-star. It just goes on to become this glass cannon that loses in the first round of fights to robots like, Infinity. Like, Fluffy doesn't become an all-star. It's just a depressing curb stomp from a robot that doesn't go on to achieve greatness itself.
Exactly, and
there was such a long time I didn't realise that 101 was seeded, because all I ever had before BBC Robot Wars UK uploaded Series 5, I'd never seen it all the way through. And when we were making the wiki, all I had to go off was like Tectonic Robot Wars and stuff like that. And so I didn't know who the other seed was in Pussycat's Heat, because all that was on YouTube was Jonathan Pierce's recap of Series 5, and all that talked about was Terahertz beating Ming 3, Terahertz losing to Fluffy, and then Fluffy losing to Pussycat. And so I was like, well, who was the other seed? Had to be somebody that Fluffy beat in the first round, otherwise it doesn't make any sense. And then turns out it was 101. I'm like, well, I'm just glad 101 was seeded still, because they were a reigning tournament winner and a Heat finalist and a former, they had all the titles basically that they needed to. But it was sad because they became one of two seeds to lose a judge's decision in the first round. The other one being Ming Dynasty, and that's company to avoid, unfortunately.
No, but at least it's even though it is a bit of an awkward limp out in that it didn't get counted out, it's still 101 taking hits from an actual spinner. So it shows that there's something there in terms of durability still, and that's just a nice.
Now I just can't stop thinking about Ming Dynasty. I can't stop thinking about that now.
Hey, don't.
Save it for the.
Do not diss that drill. That is
that self-riding drill.
Yeah, that is a precision milled weapon that would absolutely snipe Hypno-Disc's wheels, right?
Absolutely. I'm pretty sure it did in a fantasy tournament, but let's not digress. Alright, let's talk about Anarchy. Now, could you imagine a bigger step up between robots, between a Series 3 tracked robot with an auto-firing spike to a Series 6 walker with a powerful flipper, a powerful axe that goes the distance with the eventual champion? I don't think there has ever been as big a step up in history of Robot Wars between those two.
And you know what is just as incredible? The flipper and axe are both very, very powerful, and yet they don't use all the weight limit. They still had a good, 33 kilos?
33 kilograms.
Yeah, that's incredible. Imagine if they continue to either armor it up more or put more power into either of the weapons, and it somehow would have been even stronger. But even just being a good 67 kilos heavier than most other robots, there's so much in Anarchy. And it really is. It's easy to just say, yeah, this is an incredible feat, like just as a natural response. But it really is when you think that they put all of this package as a whole together in just 167 kilos. It's not like, I don't know, something like, I know Shunt's only 110 kilograms or whatever, but Shunt's still pretty basic. It's got a lightweight body. Obviously, it's just, what you call it? Its armor. I've completely blanked, but it's the basic armor.
Hardox?
No, Shunt in just the classic series. Just fiberglass.
Fiberglass.
Yeah.
Oh.
Very
all I could think of was polycarb. I'm like, there's no way it's polycarb, so I'm not going to say anything.
Very brittle stuff. But Anarchy is just this really big, thick frame, and then it has polycarb to protect its legs. But as an actual body, Anarchy is just thick, chunky, logical. It has even the inactive plow at the front is essentially a weapon because, again, it's putting thought into ground clearance. Like, Mike Franklin really knew how to try and make the most balanced, efficient walker possible. He didn't half-arse it. He didn't just think, let's just change 101 and go for a walker now. No, he didn't just think, let's make a claw, as much as I love it, a Claude Hopper clone. No, let's let's actually make a battling walker. And yeah, Anarchy might get a little bit too much praise at times for its combat capabilities against the elite, but it really is a fantastic machine in everything that it does. So credit to Mike.
It's such a well engineered robot. He did a really good job on it.
You could always tell that Mike was a good engineer with how durable 101 was, but his
and even Robo-Doc back in Series 2.
His expertise, though, just really shines through here in the best way possible. It isn't just, oh, Robo-Doc and 101 are reliable, good job, Mike. It's now, wow, he's made this complete work of art. You can really see he knows his stuff. And that's what,
it is a work of art. That's exactly what Anarchy is. It just looks beautiful to look at.
His tag team partner, Simon Harrison, the amount of times that he just waxes lyrical about how Mike Franklin is as an engineer, and this is the best example to show casual fans, hardcore fans, what Simon Harrison has seized day in, day out from Mike Franklin all the time, and it really is great. What a machine it is.
I think we won't talk about Anarchy's fights because both the first round fight and the heat final have been discussed in depth by Nick and I on the Ultimate Review podcast. Theo, do you want to just quickly mention anything you want to say about the Anarchy fights? Because then we'll do a quick supercut of how Anarchy would have done in Series 6 otherwise.
Well, Anarchy's fights, I think what amazed me with Anarchy is it's so refined in all of its battles. It's so durable, and as if it's been competing for years and it's been perfected through trial and error. Even the thin polycarpets and the complex legs, that's not an issue. It's amazing.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, it looks like it's been tried and tested. Like, this needed to go through war after war after war to get to this completely optimized Walker design. You think, oh, maybe he entered it in the Walker Championships in Series 3 or something like that, but no, this is just Anarchy.
He just built it.
You feel like it's something that he was building for a while.
I mean, he had Scuttle. This was essentially Scuttle from Techno Games, but that didn't have proper weapons. So he had to somehow give this thing offensive power and make it effective, and he did. First time of asking against some, like that melee, it doesn't have true all-star names in it, but they are all competent machines, and that's why most of them went basically the distance in that fight. So for Anarchy to beat respected machines like Judge Shred and doing as well as 4, and then obviously getting the better of Revolution 2 isn't the best thing ever, but it's not like it's just beating on Deadwood in the first round of Series 5. It really gets stuck in a crowded melee, so fair play to it for that. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think Anarchy, everyone acknowledges Anarchy is better than its combat record lets it show, because Inshreddable shouldn't have even been in round 2, really. And then it loses in the heat final. It really only gets one fight to show off, and it shares it with Thor. So it would have been nice to see it get one great one-on-one victory. But let's do quick fire, same as from Series 2. Either, neither, or both from Series 6. So Razor and Raging Reality versus Anarchy.
I think it gets the better of Raging Reality, which will struggle to flip it properly and will damage that really thin armor. Razor, there is potential with the weapons, but the sides are too long and Razor's too nimble, so it's not beating Razor.
Like, it's very easy to say what the hell does Razor do to Anarchy, but Razor will find a way. All you got to do is get the wedge under the side, because Anarchy's not got the quickest turning circle, whereas Razor's exceptionally nimble. I'm sure that Razor could probably get underneath the side wedge and pierce through that polycarb, and then that would just be all the damage it needs to win on a judge's decision.
Well, it would just be a Razor control job. Ian and Simon always adapted so well, and they'd just driving into the CPZs, waste time putting it over the flame pit, whatever. It's Razor. It will win a control fight as much as it needs to win a destruction fight. So
yeah, Theo.
I mean, I suppose Razor it could only really win that battle on damage alone. I don't think it had the pushing power or grip to shove Anarchy into CPZ or lift it up.
No,
it would never be able to lift it up.
No, but once Razor props half of the legs off the ground because of its wedge, then you're essentially just moving a static kind of heavy box around, but with Anarchy hardly getting traction with its legs, it should be able to move it around, I'd imagine.
Yeah. Firestorm 4 and Exterminator.
Ooh.
Now, see, this is the thing. There's a lot made out about Anarchy against flippers in that if it gets flipped, it's done. But it has the polycarb wings, so it's always going to land flat on its axe, and that axe will absolutely be able to self-right it. So it's not going to be a one-and-done flip job from Firestorm.
And also, it's very hard to get underneath Anarchy because it doesn't have wheels. It's it'd be harder to get under.
Firestorm struggled against Ripper, which was not necessarily the lowest robot, but it was just such a awkward, kind of boxy, flat shape. So, yeah, Firestorm's going to really have to work. It will probably end up winning because I can't imagine Anarchy, its axe being fired quickly enough because it had those issues against Tornado where it didn't fire quickly enough. But yeah, Firestorm's going to have to work for it, definitely.
And also, I doubt Firestorm even has the power to flip Anarchy, because obviously it's not the most powerful weapon you can see.
No, it's a low pressure front hinged flipper.
It's low pressure.
Yeah,
it's low. It runs on low pressure, but
I think it's one of those where Graham Bone's going to eventually maybe just taunt it towards the side wall, and he'll try and prop it up against an angle grinder or something awkward. Yeah. But it would really be tactical.
Like an out the arena flip, completely out the question.
I think it beats Exterminator pretty easily, though.
Exterminator, it will probably take damage. Marlon will go for an axe-on-axe exchange, and he'll come off worse. And Exterminator will then slowly decline in the fight, probably, I'd imagine.
Yeah, the flipper will decide it, in my opinion.
I think it's the beauty of a lot of Mike's robots is that they don't decline in the battle. They start off how they finish, usually.
Chaos 2, I think Anarchy wins.
Yeah.
Anyone disagree?
So. I think
Chaos 2 beats itself at this point in its career. Like, you take the heat final, Chaos 2 versus Dantom Kia, and you just sub Dantom Kia out, put Anarchy in, it's pretty much the same fight.
Yeah,
Chaos 2 flips itself over, it ends up in the CPZ.
As much as I love George Francis, and he is a good driver, I think he struggles a bit more in the more tactical fights. Put him in a fast-paced fight, and he can absolutely keep up with the action. But here, he'll probably overthink it a bit. Like, even the Smidsy flip, the out-of-the-arena attempt, where he just kind of had too much time to think about it, and he flipped it too early, and then all of that crap happened afterwards. So here he'll probably try and line up the perfect attack. That hollow flipper panel will probably get damaged by the axe, or even getting flipped about by Anarchy could cause it issues, as we know.
Yeah.
And yeah, Chaos 2 just probably won't last the distance anymore in these type of fights.
Dantom Kia versus Anarchy? It's a really tough one. I reckon I want to say Anarchy.
If it lands an axe blow, Dantom Kia's link's going to fall out, or its batteries are going to fry. Because, not being funny, it didn't even take a hit from Pussycat in the All-Stars properly. And
Dantom Kia's wedges are not well suited to get below Anarchy. Like, you need a precision milled steel strip or something like that to get underneath Anarchy. Those wedges they're designed to get under bigger ground clearances than
you can absolutely imagine Dantom Kia's front cones like getting beached on Anarchy's little front plow as it tries to maneuver itself, but it's either Mike Lambert just about paces it right and tries to press Anarchy up against the arena wall, or he takes a hit on top, and because it's the pre-boot Dantum Kia, it breaks down from one hit.
Although here's a thought. Because Dantum Kia was known that it could spin on the spot as a semi-decent, wouldn't say spinner, but as a semi-decent...
Oh, no! Sit and spin victory.
I'm just saying that it was very thin. It was quite thin polycarbonate.
See, I'm not sure. I know it's polycarbonate, but wasn't it really thick?
I mean, it was a 167
it's
kilo
obviously not
robot.
Good armor, but I'm pretty sure it was so thick. Like, at the dimension, is the actual thickness there? I'm not sure.
And also, don't forget, like, Anarchy can just hit it with the axe and that'll pin it in place, won't it?
Well, if Dantum Kia is stationary, yeah, it might be spinning, but it won't be spinning.
But it won't be able to move on the spot.
Yeah, it won't be Typhoon 2. It will be T-Rex. So
it'll be 13 black upside down, basically. All right, let's fire through these ones really quickly. Shredder loses to Anarchy.
Yeah.
Yep. S3, I think, beats Anarchy pretty easily.
It will scuff it up enough, I'd say.
Oh, yeah.
Vader is probably one of the weakest heat finalists in Series 6. I think Anarchy wins that one easily. One flip. Wild Thing, I want to say Anarchy as well.
Yeah, Wild Thing will try.
Anarchy.
Wild Thing will get dug into the polycarb like it did against Vader. But...
Wild Thing in Series 5 was awful, I must say.
What?
In Series 5 or 6?
Yeah. Series 5. Like that,
I was giving you an out there. I thought you were going to say,
I was like,
Wild
what?
Thing. I thought you were going to say, Wild Thing 2 isn't that great or something. But he's gone for the Series 5 machine to have a go at.
Oh, yeah. Nah, that disc, if they're using one of those Bosch motors, that disc must have been running at like a 1-to-2 ratio. It took an age to spin up.
This is completely off topic. Let's just hold that thought for another time.
The Wild Thing podcast.
Please put me on the Wild Thing. Please put me on the Wild Thing podcast.
13 Black, I think, beats Anarchy. Unless Anarchy gets the flip. Oh, that's a tough one, actually.
I think it can.
I think it can too, actually. I was too hasty.
13 Black's awkwardly driven at times. I think Anarchy would get a flip on such a long robot.
Yeah. Stinger, I want to say Anarchy, but I feel like Stinger's too slippery. It's a tough one.
I mean,
probably.
Although Stinger's quite slippery.
It is, but it's like, can it snipe the wheel like Dominator 2 did, or bottle it round with its flipper, or will Stinger... we're too far gone from Stinger being able to sit and spin. If Dantum Kia can't sit and spin, then Stinger can't either.
Well, I mean, there's a bit of a difference between Dantum Kia's long flat top and Stinger having, like, nothing there, but...
Stinger's not that effective anymore. I don't think that it's gonna...
I don't think I'd vote on this fight. I think it's really interesting. I'd have to see.
Well, that's why you have to vote on the fight. It's
well, yeah, but I wouldn't know. I don't want to have a go at
I think I'll vote for Anarchy, but geez, it could go either way.
I'd go for Anarchy just because I think Stinger will just do fuck all.
Stinger, then.
Good. Tornado, skip that one. Supernova and Spawn again. That's one I might skip because it really depends on whether they're working or not. Does Supernova cark it at the first flip in the heat final? Is Spawn again working? I think we can just skip that one. It's too hard to say.
I'd go for Supernova on that one, actually.
I would if it worked, but the problem is it broke down in one flip, and how do we know Anarchy's not going to do the same thing Spawn again does in the heat final?
Yeah,
that's true.
There's too much there to say.
Too much. It beats Panic Attack Gold in a walk, therefore confirming that Team 101 is better than Team Panic. Terahertz, I think, beats Anarchy.
Yeah, even the axe doesn't need to damage it much. It's just going to land so many hits that it's going to win a judge's decision. So.
Yep. Hydra can't self-right particularly reliably, so I think that's Anarchy.
Not going to get into that one, but Hydra's not robust enough armor-wise either, so yeah.
Dominator 2, I think... Anarchy versus Dominator 2, that's a tough one.
I think Anarchy would probably win that now I think about it properly.
See, I reckon I'd
for-
still go
I'd go for
Dominator
Anarchy.
2, but only just.
Back in the day, I was always really like, really would Anarchy beat Dominator? But honestly, Anarchy can easily flip Dominator too because it's so long and its ground clearance is so bad. And then neither of their axes are going to damage each other.
No,
and they're
that's
both
a good
just
point.
going to flail away with their axes as well. So Anarchy would maybe edge it with a couple of flips.
Yeah.
That's what I'd probably go
Hypno-Disc,
with.
Hypno-Disc beats Anarchy, just polycarb, klaxon.
Yeah, I'm happy with that,
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
with Hypno-Disc's reliability problems here and there.
Yeah. Barbarous 2.
It'd only take a couple of hits on those legs.
Barbarous
Yeah.
2, on the other hand's reliability problems.
Yeah. Barbarous 2, one axe blow takes that out, so...
Oof. Iron Ore.
No, Barbarous
Iron
2.
Ore-esque.
Barbarous 2 takes it
Yeah.
out.
really?
Imagine Anarchy flipping itself like Iron Ore 2. Bigger Brother...
No, Barbarous will just
Bigger
take
Brother,
itself
I
out.
reckon I'd give Bigger Brother probably the best chance of all the flippers in Series 6 to beat Anarchy. I'd give it to Bigger Brother, so...
I'd probably give it the worst chance, you know. Bar Chaos 2.
Because
Because
Bigger Brother's, I think, low pressure.
yeah, Bigger Brother just never lifts anything post-Series 5 cleanly. Like, it couldn't properly
Gets a
roll
clean
over...
lift on Bearmoth and chucks it in the pit.
Well, yeah, but again, that's even an example to say why Bigger Brother's flipper wasn't that great in Series 6 onwards, because for the actual pitting, it just limply lifted Bearmoth on top of itself. So,
Wasn't that limp.
well, it was. It just lifted its back end up and it dropped back down on Bigger Brother, so it wasn't really... Yeah, I don't think it's going to have any hope of flipping Anarchy, and it's in danger itself here and there, so yeah, I'll go Anarchy on that one.
And
Anarchy.
Disco Inferno, I don't want to vote. It's just, it all depends on whether Disco
Burn,
Inferno
baby.
cucks it.
Disco Inferno's actual raw power gets kind of overrated for me.
Yeah.
When you look at it, yeah, it took open Bearmoth's scoop, which looks visually impressive, but in reality, it's just digging in on a flat vertical corner, so it's kind of easy to rip, and then it damaged Killer Carrot. So what else did it
Yeah.
really damage? Spirit of Nightmare.
Yeah. And
So,
Napalm.
Don't diss Spirit of Nightmare.
I'll diss Spirit of Nightmare all I like.
Yeah. Don't get me
So-
started on Spirit of Nightmare.
And then Anarchy has potency with its axe, so I'm going Anarchy against Inferno.
Alright, well that's that for the things. Let's have a quick chat. We're on the long side here, so I want to wrap this up in the next few minutes. But let's just talk quickly about the philosophy of Mike Franklin and how great budget bots were back in the day. We were talking about it a bit before we started recording. Budget bots, they were really there to get people into engineering, and it's a little bit of the magic of Robot Wars. You saw it with teams like 101. Hasn't translated super well to the reboot. Problem in that a lot of the Roboteers are now amateur Roboteers, and amateur Roboteers get into featherweights and build their way up instead of starting with heavyweights like the show always encouraged. So the philosophy of Mike Franklin was an admirable one. It's just hasn't dated well because the engineering has just taken off too much. It's outside of,
Yeah.
the reach of the jellyfishes of the world, really.
I think the thing with budget bots not really translating as well into the future is a mixture of obviously engineering standards for the better robots increasing so much so it unevens the playing field, but also people who desensitize what budget bots mean. Like, let's not get this wrong here. In the modern day, people seem to, when a budget bot loses, people seem to use that as an excuse. Like, you can never be criticized if a budget bot does poorly because it was a budget bot. But when you use that as a scapegoat, you then lose the meaning of what budget bots are in themselves. Instead of people trying to make, or trying to think of really cool little budget bots to make, you then just say, hey, well, this budget bot lost, so you can excuse it. But that, at the same time, delivering the message like that also means that you're not trying to improve the standards of budget bots as a whole. you're essentially saying, yeah, let's keep the expectation level, let's keep the standards on the floor. As long as you make a budget bot, it's cool. And I'm not having a go at people who...
Like, they can do no
yeah,
wrong.
exactly. I'm not having a go at people who
absolutely.
make budget bots, because it's great to see anyone making them. But at the same time, because people know how uneven the playing field is with robots such as Carbide in there, that gives people an excuse to not need to... It's not a not want, but it's a not need to try and make their budget bot as good as possible. Like,
it's like the participation trophy. It's like,
exactly.
hey, you know what? We took a blow from Carbide, and there's no shame in that. Well, okay, there's no shame in losing to Carbide. That's true, but doesn't mean your robot's any good.
Yeah, you want to give budget bots hope at the same time. That's the key.
Yes.
You don't need to make them come across as competitive, but at the same time, you don't need to be defeatist. You don't need to be, well, you know, it's a budget bot, what do you expect it to do against Carbide? It's more thinking, yeah, this budget bot maybe lasted to a judge's decision in a melee or something, or, you know, in Jellyfish's case, I know you don't like it, but it still took a lot of punishment from a lot of hefty rapid flips, and that is progress for a budget bot, as opposed to taking one hit and dying. So you want to see that bit of hope there. And that's what Mike Franklin tried to do in the first place. And you just want to keep that spirit there and try not make it too defeatist for the modern day, even though it is easy to be defeatist about it all. I understand. But, yeah. It's one of those things.
With budget bots, I think it's okay for the show to brand them as an unlikely winner.
Yeah.
But I think to actively say, oh, they didn't spend $8,000 on this, the team aren't engineers, I think that's wrong, because you can build a competent robot on a low price.
Yeah, it's basically an instant cop-out. And
but branding them as a failure because they only cost $1,000.
Yeah, it's basically an instant cop-out where, because you don't expect anything from this machine, they try and play it down immediately, but... You want to go into every fight not really knowing how much machines cost at the same time, so you don't think when you go into a melee, oh, Trolley Rage is going to get absolutely eviscerated by Carbide because we've just been told by the team that the entire machine is just going to get wrecked. You go into the fight thinking, oh, great, well, yeah, of course that's going to happen now, but if you watch the fight without any context to it, you could think maybe, oh, that's a cute little design, looks a bit low budget maybe, but you know, maybe
made out of a bloody trolley.
But maybe it could surprise me. But when the show itself just says, yeah, this is absolutely cannon fodder, then you don't have any hope.
And then it's just like the serious, like, we hope we've inspired people to make a robot. Yes, I could make that.
Like, don't
the
get
whole
me
point
wrong.
is, it's like, you meant to say, I could make that in a positive way, not in a derogatory way. It's like, oh wow, you built something that died in one hit.
Yeah,
I literally could beat that. I could do that.
Don't get me wrong. It's always good to have the message there of you can make it too, but you don't want to desensitize that message to just saying, yeah, you can make this too. You can lose in one hit. You want it to be...
It moved. It weapon fired, you know.
You want it to be, you can make this too. You can take 2 or 3 big hits from an elite robot, as opposed to, well, you might move forward a little bit.
It is a bit of a shame that we never got the Series 10 Featherweight Championship that they were going to do, because that's where
absolutely.
they could have absolutely got people like Dave Laurie to build a featherweight, and like that would have been a perfectly good. You keep the Dave Moldses and the Dave Youngs and all the other Daves out of the featherweights, and you fill that with people like Dave Laurie.
Yeah, you just have the grassroots of Roboteering in that little tournament like that. It's nice
and
to
you
have
fill them
as
with the
an extra.
newcomers, and that way you get newcomers into the show, whilst also, and you can bring back old faces. You get get Simon Harrison to build a featherweight King Bee Powerworks. Imagine the fun you could have by building having little fun things. You get to have so many more faces in the show, and that way you can cram the heavyweight full of aftershocks and Apollos and concussions and Thors and pulsars and Ironsides and all that, and you get like a nice blend.
Yeah, as
You know,
much as
Behemoth sits out
I-
a series, but Anti-B comes back. For
as much
example.
as I and loads of other people love the reboot, for a good portion of the competitors, you could just sense the inevitability of what was going to happen. And although that was still true in the classic series at times, you could also... Teams did genuinely have fun, and the show still portrayed that fun, but in the modern day, the show was just a bit like, yeah, this machine's obviously going out, but we're inspiring people, or they're inspiring people.
And it was my main issue with the reboot, I guess, because the original series, they tried to send off a message, you can build a robot on a low budget and it can go far, doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter as long as it's good.
Yeah.
But with the reboot, they berated the budget robot so much that I feel like it's intimidated quite a few people thinking, oh, I'll get into this, but I don't have much money.
Okay.
And now they've...
It's okay to it's okay to say, yeah, you're not going to beat Carbide, but it's not okay to just say, oh,
you have no chance, don't bother trying.
You are here as blank named robot number 30 in the competition.
Yeah.
You're obviously going out.
Yeah.
Case in point, Crushstation. Let's get one of the most ingenious designs of engineering and stick it in with 3 massive spinners for it to get killed in 2 seconds.
Apex and Pulsar.
It's
Like-
just so... It just feels
That was everything for me. As soon as I saw that draw, I said, you guys do not understand what you're doing with this.
Yeah, you want everything to have freedom to express itself, and that just felt so wrong.
And all I think back to is that great little tussle between King Bee and 101 at the end of the Tag Team Terror, where it's like, it doesn't matter, they're just going to scrap at each other.
It was still entertaining.
It's still entertaining.
With their weapons, with those weapons.
So, yeah.
And it's, and especially now, since all we have are live events in the UK, we need those builders that the show's put off now.
Yeah.
And so
that's the thing.
That's
We're not
why
trying to say the Roboteers in the reboot necessarily who made the robots are to blame for this message. It's more the reboot that comes across with this really awkward, aggressive
Spin
tone.
City.
It's like a toxic message it was sent out, and that's why I have a whole document ready why the reboot screwed over the live scene.
Yeah.
I can send it you later. But I think, if a Series 4 was going to happen, I was...
You mean Series 11?
determined.
Series 4 did happen.
Series 11. Sorry.
You may have heard.
Series
You may
11.
have heard of Series 4. It has Dominator 2 versus 101.
Nah, but if a Series 11 did happen, I was determined to build a budget robot that would do semi-decently.
Yeah.
Or at least go on a speech like I am doing now, saying how good they can be.
If you were given the chance to, and you weren't put in with 3 big spinners, that is.
Yeah.
You almost want like a new blood heat.
Here's Ironside 4 and, Apex 2 and, whatever's bigger than a Magnetar.
You almost
Quasar.
You almost want 4 heats where there's just a blend of great robots and any robots in between. And then you want like a 5th and final heat where it's just like a new blood heat. Where robots can express themselves and be...
So basically like
free
Magnetar's heat if you took out Magnetar and Thor.
Yeah, pretty much. Where there's just cute little robots who can express themselves and say, there is still a space here and the show will allow that space for the less expressive machines, but
But anyway, 1 hour and 27 with more to be edited in later. Let's wrap it up here. Favourite Team 101 fight, Theo?
Oh.
I've got to say Hypno-Disc.
Oh
no! Nick.
No!
Oh, that's classic. You could not have picked a worse choice for Nick. That's hilarious. Nick, what's yours?
Mine will be, probably because of nostalgia in a good way, the Waldorf fight because of the drama with the near pitting at the start.
The
of the
Waldorf fight. What a classic choice.
Yeah.
Mine's obviously Dominator 2, but if I was picking a win, it's probably Centurion.
Cute choice.
Good shout. So that's it for Team 101. We hope you guys enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next time and you will see our vest made of real Deator chest.
Yes.
Oh,
Until then, ta-ra.
see ya.
Right.